the cholesterol lowering industry is so powerful, they can publish whatever they want on whatever topic. You know, the gentleman that published Doctoring Data, he made a great point about it, how you can get stuff in through the reviewers. And the title of the document, the paper was Overweight and Obese and Early Mortality. And then when you read it, actually overweight had lower mortality than regular weight and even lower mortality than underweight. So, but the title was completely deceiving. So you got to be really careful. So when I say that statins disrupt the intestinal microbiome, you'll find papers that say statins improve the microbiome. It's plausible because they're anti-infective. And if you're treating something like H. pylori, if it has some effect on that as an antibiotic, then it can improve the intestinal microbiome. But in general, there's enough papers out there that indicate that it doesn't improve the intestinal microbiome. And as Dr. Carter preaches, you know, 80% of your immunity is in your gut.
Absolutely.
You eat a raspberry from Guatemala. I'm quoting Dr. Trump again. You can believe if you look under a microscope, you'll see little critters walking around. You know, how do they not get into your system? Well, the strong acid eliminates them right off the bat. And then the other thing about the microbiome is Tom Barodi teaches that it's not about just the number of organisms, but the diversity. Every little organism has its own little job. Think about the Henry Ford assembly line. One person is not making that car. There's an assembly line and everybody has a vital role of getting their part of the project done timely to keep the vehicles moving down the line. That means every single one has a specific but different role. And you can't have, if it takes 50 stations, you're not going to do well on 20. You're not going to produce cars. You're not going to produce health. So it's really an important thing. So it's the diversity and the depth and breadth. That's why we don't recommend the same probiotic all the time, because they're all fairly narrow, except for a few of them in terms of the number of organism types, not the number of organisms, but the organism types. And so, you know, you still can have a choke point in your health if you overload it in some, but deficient in others. So that's enough of a preamble there. That's why we recommend Megaspore to get through the gut and really contribute quantity, and then Bravo to bring in diversity, fermented foods, going out in nature. All these things contribute to your microbiome. So here's the thing.
But Megaspore can do really on its own. I mean, Bravo is a next generation type thing, but when you do the prebiotic formula from Megaspore, as well as their spore forming biotic, and let's say their what they call the mega mucosa, that's a amazing trifecta to really get your microbiome back on track. And now they have tons of clinical studies out there on that. So that's a really, really good combination of things.
You know, we will do a talk on supplements, but we'll do very targeted ones as well. And I think probiotics are an extremely important topic, and the prebiotic probiotic relationship and what Dr. Carter just talked about. So that will be coming. Obviously an important topic, but
yeah,
you know, some people say, why are my lipids up? It may be a sign of a poor microbiome. So our studies suggest that gut microbiome may play an important role in the variation in blood lipids, and of course body mass index, because you know you could become my blog on the 26 things that make you and keep you hungry. Okay, and if your body mass index is high, you've been hungry a lot, so you're not getting good digestion. Simple as that. Here's a bigger group: expanding role of the gut microbiota in lipid metabolism. The gut microbiome contributes to a substantial portion of the variation in blood lipids. And another one, gut microbiome lipid metabolism from associations to mechanism. So the gut microbiome is transitioning from being a missing organ to a potential target for therapeutic applications. I hope they're not talking about Linzest. I hope they're talking about good probiotics. Do the complex interplay between the gut microbiome and the host genome and diet. A systematic approach is required to pave the way for therapeutic development. Now, didn't Dr. Carter just talk about that? And it's not therapeutic, it's natural. So it's a good thing. So that's all I'm going to say about the microbiome and lipids. But it just shows you that there's a myriad of things that can lead to your LDL and HDL and your total cholesterol and your free cholesterol having variation, inflammation, infection, the quality of your microbiome. All these factors play into it. Drug use, drugs that can affect the microbiome, drugs that can affect LDL levels. So a lot of different things can play a part in that. A comment on this is, you feel free to read this article if you subscribe to the New York Times, the Well blog from 2014, A New Women's Issue, Statins. And basically, I'll show you in a moment comment from the New England Journal of Medicine, the top medical journal in the world, and their disingenuousness about this. But the bottom line is, when you look hard at the data, there is essentially no proof that there's a benefit to women. And about 5 years ago, the industry realized that, and they've worked very hard to create cherry-picked trials to show that there is a benefit. But the fact that they have to go to that extent after all these years since 1987 and billions of dollars made and so many of these drugs sold, that if there was a real benefit, it would be very clear. At the very beginning, that's why I showed the difference about what a cure looks like. Pellagra, TB, what was the other one we had in there? But typhoid fever. When you find a cure, the incidences drop to zero very, very rapidly. And these were back in, before we had internet and, great connectivity, they still drop very quickly. But that's not happening with the indications that are tied to statins, or the cholesterol lowering. So here's another one, Medscape. So they talk about, in some context, improving adverse heart outcomes in women. But meta-analyses, which are studies of studies, so someone looked at all the big studies and combined it into a big analysis and published a paper on that primary prevention, stopping heart attacks, no statistically significant cardioprotective effect for women. That's what the drug's designed for. So why are women taking that? And then this is women broadly in big studies, but the older you are, the less the effect. Okay, and it's very clear from the work of Ravenscoff and others on older populations, 65 and older, that the hazard ratio for mortality when your total cholesterol is below 200 is higher than your mortality if it's greater than 200. And of course, we talked about that paper from Nature where really the range we want you to be in is 200, 210 to around 240. So here's the New England Journal of Medicine, statin use in women. So my comment is, too bad New England Journal of Medicine cannot just say they don't work. So what do they say? Until further trials of statins enroll women in substantial numbers. Okay, I guess 1 million isn't enough because there's so many people in statin trials. And even if they're a third women, which is about what they are, it's a huge number. The benefit and risk of statin therapy for primary prevention, preventing heart attacks, will remain less well-defined in women than in men. What does less well-defined mean? That's why, when I read that, that's why I had to put this comment up here. Too bad any JM just doesn't just say, they don't work. And it's like, let's translate the BS speak, please. So, this is just a Google search. Statins, women, no big deal. And they change. But you know, it's interesting that when you do a search statin for women, a lot of the top hits come back saying, don't give them to women. Hyman, why women should stop taking their cholesterol meds. Statin in women, Harvard Health talks about it. Older women taking statins face higher risk of diabetes. And of course, diabetics have more heart disease. Many women needlessly taking these drugs, so on and so forth. Huffington Post, statin for women, not my patient. So, you know, all I can tell you is that next time we talk on this subject, I'm going to go over the Zocor study in great detail, showing you what the real benefit is based on well-published studies and on whom that it works for to some degree. So that'll be sort of like our closing next time, not next week. But we've already talked about this in the diabetes section, but we're increasing diabetes risk by 71%. And diabetes leads downstream to so many health problems. So not a good deal. Now I'm going to talk about pain, heart, muscle, myopathy, things like that. So what we see is, and we had this last time when Dr. Senoff out of MIT did the database search and data crunching, and she's a biologist and a computer science PhD at the Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Lab at MIT. And she said that the data on side effects from these drugs is clearly underreported based on her analysis, and that the side effects clearly line up with good publications on side effects that aren't really reported on the drug sheet or, you know, reported by the doctors prescribing these drugs. And once again, if you're going to your doctor and they're going to threaten you to take a statin drug, ask them what the drug does. And if they say lower cholesterol, ask them to explain further, because you don't think that's right. Don't go after them, don't attack them. Call me and I'll do that. Call Dr. Carter. He's more diplomatic than I am. You know, call Ghostbusters and we'll take care of them. So myopathy, a common dilemma not reflected in clinical trials. They're hiding this. And this is from Yale, University of Salt Lake, San Diego, Scripps. So these aren't, you know, fly by night, you know, traditional medicine naysayers. So when we talk about pain, you know, exercise is an inflammatory process, and there's a lot of, when you exercise well and you break down tissue, your body responds and rebuilds it better than before in many cases, okay? So exercise has worsened muscle injury with statins, and statins have worsened pain and injury with exercise. Women older than 65 have shown significant weakness with statin use, with the magnitude of the effect increasing with still older age. So like, this is where I get into, you know, immunity. We have, immunity is multifaceted, but I make it simple, 3 groups. Innate immunity, white blood cells, attacking infection. Adaptive immunity, you know, specific immunity against specific pathogens, infection. And then tertiary immunity of things like amyloids, cholesterol. And so if you're not allowing the transport of these important molecules, there's no question you'll have muscle weakness and inability to really flourish and get benefit, just like the NSAIDs that reduce inflammation. Different mechanism, but both these drugs have an effect on the quality of the benefit from the exercise. So that's a shame, because, you know, a lot of people don't like to exercise and then they don't get any benefit. Why the hell am I exercising? I feel worse. That's one of the biggest problems with statins, is like people don't feel like exercising. It's uncomfortable. You know, they may not have overt pain, but it's much more challenging. So we're going to segue to cancer. I'm going to actually come back to pain a little bit, or heart failure, but You know, cancer takes a toll on your body, and, you know, treating the tumor is not the disease, but the tumor will kill you, and it's consuming tissue. So if you want to survive, you better have good repair mechanism for the tissue being destroyed. Otherwise, eventually that organ's going to go bye-bye, as will you. So here's kidney patients. Low cholesterol before surgery associated with more advanced cancer and greater cancer spread after surgery, because we're not controlling it. You know, so cholesterol has antibiotic properties. It also has repair properties. High cholesterol, 43% less likely to die after surgery. So I certainly wouldn't want to be going into surgery with on a statin drug, but I can guarantee you the surgeon is not telling you that. Unlikely. So here's a brief communication on dyslipidemia in cancer. So we're talking about an improper level of LDL and HDL, thus the carriers for cholesterol, vitamin A, so on and so forth. Studies have revealed alterations in lipid profile to be associated with cancer. So what does alteration mean? This paper is hard to find. It's way in my archive somewhere. But the bottom line is, if your LDL is normally 120 and then suddenly it's 80, something's going on. You may be consuming things, so you're not transporting it, or you know, any number of things that would lead to the reduction in lipid levels. Lower levels of lipids may be due to increased utilization of lipids by the tumor cells or synthesis of cell membranes. But I think it's not really the tumor cells, it's the repair of the tissue that the tumor cells are damaging as well. That's not discussed here, but low levels may serve as a marker or prognostic indicator for underlying malignancy. One of these days, I'm going to show you what Dr. Carter and I have been working on very hard, a very sophisticated cancer algorithm. And as much as I don't want to have it in there, because it's so ubiquitous, people get these tests, LDL and total cholesterol are part of the algorithm because they are predictive, particularly on the low end. There's no question that low cholesterol, low total cholesterol, low LDL is a much higher risk factor for any kind of health outcome, adverse health outcome, than high LDL and total cholesterol. Trying to work on my language. You see the slips, it's hard. Low cholesterol predisposes to cancer. So here's a study of 140,000 people, found that cancer was inversely associated with cholesterol. So in other words, lower the cholesterol, higher the cancer. Very simple. Lower the cholesterol, higher the cancer. Skin cancers, these are non-melanoma, like basal cell and squamous cells. So I'm just going to do a little mute on background noise. Don't take offense, but I'll put you back on a bit. So let's go more breast cancer, you know, very topical. Get to play with a little statistics today on this one. Statins and breast cancer. 12 out of 286 women in the statin group, but only 1 out of 290 in the placebo group had breast cancer at follow-up. 12 out of 286. So that's not a big number, percentage-wise, on an absolute scale. But since the medical industry doesn't report on an absolute scale for the most part, let's look at the relativistic statistics. They say that statins reduce heart disease by 20 to 30%, relative. Well, breast cancer goes up by 1,200% compared to no statin. Huge increase. And then there's a little cynical thing, not by me, but by the folks at BMC Medicine. After that, most statin investigators took care not to include high-risk women in their trials. That's wonderful. So here's another one. Statins increase breast cancer by over 200%. You got to wonder why 1 in 7 women in the U.S. have breast cancer. And I'm no expert on this, but I can assert that women are prescribed statins, or at least attempted to be prescribed statins as frequently as men. And maybe even more because they go to the doctor more. They're more health conscious. Both guesses, but
I have no idea.
here's from Dr. Seneff, is that statins, in this case, are increasing pancreatitis, 20 published case reports, and that pancreatitis can be a precursor to pancreatic cancer, one of the most deadly of all the cancers. So not a good association. So what do we have here? Analysis of lipid profiles, abnormalities in lipids, an approximate risk for cancer, cardiovascular disease. So there was a significant increase in this case. We had an increase in the total cholesterol. So you got to look at it from both ends. There's no question it's a U curve. Lowest in the middle, 200 to 240. Highest on the low end, and high on the high end. So here's sort of a summary of the mechanism. If lipids go up with inflammation and infection from the UC San Francisco team for repair and recovery, doesn't it make sense that cancer deaths go up as statins push the LDL down? LDL and lipids, sorry for the different terms for the same thing. And LDL is a low density lipoprotein, often just called a lipid. So there's your connection. So let's go to the brain. We only have 16 slides to go. We're going to stop at 90. For all those sports fans keeping score. So Michael, this lady I talked to, this tough lady from North Jersey, said she looked at my website, and when she saw that Kilmer McCulley was one of my mentors, she said, I'll give this guy a chance.
Oh, excellent.
And so Kilmer McCulley is a pathologist at Harvard and one of the most thoughtful writers in medicine in terms about mechanisms and hypotheses that you'll ever meet. 85, still goes to the office every day, mainly writing papers. So here's from Scientific American. It's not dementia. It's your heart medication, cholesterol, drugs, and memory, why cholesterol drugs might affect memory. And so here we are talking about the experience that the author of this book, LIPITOR, Thief of Memory, experienced that motivated him to write the book. He, at the age of 68, got completely confused into a state of amnesia. That's not, it may not be directly causing a dementia at this point, but it's definitely mucking with your brain, and it's not helping you. It's not helping you avert dementia, shall we say. He said the only thing that came to mind, he had recently started taking the statin drug LIPITOR.
And it's more common than people think, though.
Oh,
absolutely.
Right. So even the FDA mandates warnings on memory loss, diabetes, and muscle pain. Your doctor doesn't say it, but it's out there. And here's the so-called space doc again, talking about the prevalence of Lou Gehrig's disease, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, MS, and how they've increased since 1982. And so many people are on these drugs since around that time, actually 1987. And he talks about pathways, and I won't get into the tauopathies, but basically the two hallmarks of Alzheimer's are the amyloid and the tau. And there's a small group of people that know that both of these are protective. There's a larger group now that understands that the amyloid is protective, but very few understand tau. That's why a lot of people are investing in companies like Tau RX and things like that. But we wrote our book in 2014. And when I saw Tau RX as a company formed, I wish they were publicly traded, because I would have shorted them and I wouldn't be talking to you folks now, because I'd be on Bora Bora. But, I knew it was destined to fail, because hibernating animals create the tau, and they're in a low oxygen hypoxic environment. and the tau is protecting the brain. And that's exactly what's happening in Alzheimer's. So getting rid of something that's protecting hypoxia is probably not a good thing. Probably not a good thing. So a little mechanistic stuff. So basically, looking at these drugs in mouse models, I don't like mouse models for anything, but you know, it's a necessary evil sometime, and they have some help. But they're affecting, they see changes in the so-called lipid rafts. So movement of fats around the brain. So I love this. I don't know who these folks are, but they need a lesson on basic mechanisms of disease. So they say, regarding long-term statin therapy, are we trading stronger hearts for weaker brains? That would be incongruent under any circumstance, because these two organs live in the same systems. Yeah, there's a little difference in the fat-loving versus water-loving environments. But at the end of the day, the brain is one of the most vascular tissues in the body. And a vascular tissue is related back to the heart, because it's all the same circulatory system. So there's no way we are trading stronger hearts for weaker brains. In fact, we're trading weaker hearts and weaker brains for money. Just saying. Just saying. So here's a little thing on Parkinson's. When your cholesterol is below 180 compared to greater than 240, not even looking in the middle here where you're definitely going to be lowest, but there's a 40% reduction. So here's sort of the U curve again, or J curve, very steep on the low side and less steep on the high side. Same kind of finding. And that's not for cardiovascular mortality or mortality. Now this is the same kind of curve set up for neurodegenerative conditions. Exact same trajectory. Just shows you that, you know, we are not trading healthy hearts for sick brains or vice versa. It's all the same. This is just can statins make you stupid? Okay, everybody put some wax in their ears. The highest percentage of people taking statins are doctors.
Well,
okay, I'm lying. I don't know the stats on that. But whoopsie. So we won't go into this, but a lot of cases of problems with the brain with these drugs. So statins and heart failure. Now, wait a minute. This is a cardioprotective drug, right? So why are we having heart failure? Okay, because cardio is the vascular and heart failure is more looking at the muscle. But once again, they're all connected. It's the same tissue. And this is done at the Brigham at Harvard. So it's not a weak group of researchers doing this. CNN, heart failure may worsen with statins. All you got to do is watch 60 Minutes and you see what drugs they're pushing. And those are the high-priced drugs that are getting, you know, becoming more and more popular because the disease is becoming more and more prevalent. Why? Because the 48 million Americans that are on statin drugs are at much higher risk for heart failure. Why? Because statins are statin. Heart's a muscle. It needs CoQ10. It needs LDL. It needs cholesterol. So, new study shows statins actually worsen your heart function. No kidding. What about the exercise? You know, it's not just the muscle tissue that's not repairing, it's the heart that's not working efficiently. I won't go in any more into this slide here, but a little blurry, but statins stimulate atherosclerosis and heart failure. Expert review by a bunch of Japanese. And, you know, that's why what made Dr. Trump so special, he read articles in, well, he was fluent in French and English. He read a lot of French journals, but he read a lot of journals from overseas to look at the potential variation in statistical analysis of studies. But, you know, statin inhibits the synthesis of vitamin K2. And Didn't realize that. I thought it was just a transport, but they're saying inhibits the synthesis as well in the liver. So it's shutting down CoQ10, it's shutting down K2, it's shutting down LDL synthesis in your liver. And so it leads to calcification. Now, if you look at Cleveland Clinic and Nielsen, the head of cardiology at the most famous cardiology clinic in the world, is a big fan of the statin drugs, obviously. And, he's published some papers, Cleveland Clinic has, that said, oh yeah, we see more calcification in people on statins, but it's not the heart harming form. You know what I'm saying? I don't think we want a plaque of calcium in our vessels, no matter what you tell me the form is. I wasn't quite convinced by the arguments, but so once again, you can see statins cause calcification, leading to atherosclerosis, and then you can see statins cause calcification, not leading to atherosclerosis. Which one do you think's right? Based on, the ubiquitous calcium coronary score that are being done all around the country now. And there was a great documentary on that 10 years ago, how hard it was to get that test into mainstream. Real hard fight. But CoQ10 is a fuel for your heart. Your heart beats around 100,000 times a day. It's a muscle. Your heart has high levels of CoQ10 to work efficiently. CoQ10 is shut down by, or to some degree, diminished by the statin drug use. And Columbia University study, the very bottom line here, found that within 30 days, your CoQ10 levels can be decreased by half on the statin drug. We don't know which statin, what dose, but that's a significant decrease. Let's just say there's a 25% excess. We're still in a deficit. Your body has a little, runs over a little bit. So not a good thing. And I think this is what I found. I think CoQ10 is carried through LDL as well. Somewhere I think I read that. So, not only are you lowering CoQ10 production, but you're lowering transport. So it's a double whammy. Here it is. CoQ10 is a fat-soluble nutrient. So they don't say it directly, but you can be sure fat-soluble nutrients are transported through your bloodstream in LDL. So once again, double whammy. So that's why we have such an increase in heart failure. And that's why we're advertising Entresto on 60 Minutes, because we're not producing as much CoQ10 and then we're not making it available. Bad deal. Statins may reduce benefit of exercise. A little bit out of sync here, but that's all right. Simvastatin impairs exercise training adaptation. This is really important. Now, we're trying to work with people. Look, if you're overweight, you're going to get a blood pressure medication, metformin, and you're going to get a statin. It doesn't matter what your lipids are, because I've seen it all the time. It's like you're diabetic, you're getting metformin, you're getting a blood pressure medication, and you're getting a statin drug. I've had so many people that said, well, they put me on the statin too, and my cholesterol is normal. It's just something they do. Okay, so now these people are overweight, they're trying to get them to move, they're lethargic, they're in pain, and now, after 12 weeks, those in the exercise-only group increased their cardiorespiratory fitness by an average of 10%. Those who exercised and took statins saw only a 1.5% increase, barely noticeable. Why the hell am I doing all this work? I'm getting nothing out of it. So on a relative statistic basis, on absolute, it's 8.5%. But on a relative statistical basis, they're down compared to the people in terms of improving cardiorespiratory fitness by 667%. Another bad deal. So overall, different from the New York Times. Overall, the studies show that working out while taking statins exacerbated metabolic perturbations in muscles. The study authors conclude the drug made running harder and more damaging for the rats. What were the people stepping on the rats? Oh, statin safety has come under considerable scrutiny in recent weeks, only to be wiped out by the marketing since 2012. So that's where we're going to stop today. And stop the share. And there you go. Did any of you folks ever watch Car Talk? Click and Clack, the Tappet brothers?
I did.
Yeah, they were a Boston group, but they went national. But at the end of every one of their things, and they were hilarious, they say, well, you've wasted another perfectly good hour watching Car Talk or listening to Car Talk. So does anybody have any questions? Is anybody going to continue the statin drug?
Actually, packing to move, I found a prescription of a statin drug that a doctor had prescribed for me. I have no idea why. And I clearly had decided not to take it and had forgotten about it.
Louise, one of our friends that we met introduced us to a guy, I think his name was Eric, it'll come to me at some point, that was the author of the article that said statins should be put in water. So I think you should put it in the water. But seriously, don't flush it down the toilet. You know, I live on this lake in East Tennessee, and, you know, when the TVA manages it, and when they do water testing, they're finding a lot of drugs.
Really?
Oh, there are tons of drugs in all of the water supplies. That's why everyone should do filtered water. Don't ever do just regular tap water. It's full of everything.
Yeah. So it's like, don't flush it, burn it. You know,
Well, in Massachusetts, where I no longer reside, we take it to the police station. You dump your drugs off at the police station.
yeah, and they're probably repackaging it and selling it.
I know.
I know the union's up, the police union's up in Massachusetts.
You
But the
know,
other thing you could do is give it to, you know, give it to the doctor. That wasn't good. I'll give it to a patient. That wasn't a good solution.
my younger brother had cystic fibrosis, and I remember my father, who was basically his doctor, lamenting that there was so much information. This would be in the 50s through the 80s. There was so much information out there on how to lower your cholesterol, but there wasn't a lot on how to increase your cholesterol, which he needed to do with my brother. Is there any science or information on that now, or is that still malingered?
Yeah, you know, lowering it is easy because there's a process to produce it.
Right.
It's very difficult to trick the liver into producing more. But as we showed earlier on the first session, that your brain actually produces its own cholesterol to some degree. So that's a good thing. But really, statistically, it looks like you only get 20% from food. So foods high in cholesterol will at least give you a little bit of boost. I had liver tonight. That's high in cholesterol. I had a beer to go with it because that's the only way I can do the liver. But that's a sidebar. But brain is highest in cholesterol. Egg yolks are good high in cholesterol. So there's plenty of things.
But also just optimizing your liver function, because that's where it's mainly made.
Nice point.
So, I mean, everyone has some degree of, dysfunction of their livers because, liver being the main detoxification organ, right? But it is, burdened by so many different things, all the toxins in our environment, the heavy metals, the mold toxins, myriad number of things. So people really have to, understand what the liver truly is doing. And of course, when you go to the traditional doctor, if those liver enzymes are not extraordinarily elevated, they're going to say that you're fine. But in our universe, just mild elevations in your liver tell us it's struggling. So, being on supplements like, milk thistle, N-acetylcysteine, glutathione, calcium D-glucarate, different things. There are a whole host of different things, but you really want to be kind to your liver and get it up to its maximum capacity. And then, yes, then it will also help to, optimize your cholesterol levels, because cholesterol is the building block for all of our cells. It's the building block for all of our hormones. It's the building block for, our nerves and brain. It's the building block for vitamin D when you, get sun exposure, and a whole host of things. So,
Michael, what do you feel about Christopher Shade's liver program?
Oh, his liver sauce is awesome. So there's a whole lot of good stuff in that liquid formula. And then when you combine it with his ultra binder, that works marvelously. So, kind of bringing things down, because of course, when he first started, 10 years ago, he had the detox cube and so forth. And there were a lot of different things in there, and it was pretty expensive. It made it a bit more onerous for people to take so many different things to detox the body. But, most recently, he's kind of, simplified the program where, you take the liver sauce, you can combine it with glutathione, and the ultra binder. And that's a great, combination of things, again, because we are just exposed to so many toxins, if you have an air freshener in your home, that is an endocrine disruptor. If it's not from essential oils and it's from Glade, that is something that's causing toxicity in you.
Michael, a liver detox program, is that a supplement you take every day for the rest of your life, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I take liver detox formulas every day. Because again, you could do a 7-day cleanse or a 14-day cleanse or 21-day cleanse or whatever. And then people think that they're fine, but again, not unless you've gone into an isolation, situation, you're going to be, struck with those toxins again. So just do mild detoxification strategies on an everyday basis. Even, with this whole coronavirus thing, that's really one of the critical things. The liver is involved in your immune system, strength, believe it or not, so
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of COVID, I listened to an interview with Jay Richards this morning, and he said there was some LIPITOR or some other statin in his COVID treatment protocol.
Yeah, they're trying to push.
What's that about?
Yeah. Well, again, they're trying to repurpose every drug out there, for its benefits. Now, but obviously, LIPITOR does not have an antiviral component, but it does have an antibacterial component. So when you look at this whole COVID situation, obviously it's caused by a virus, but there can be bacterial superinfections. So that's why, looking at, the Zithromax to add to the protocol from an overgrowth of bad bacteria can be somewhat beneficial, shall we say. But again, the mass media is going to try to push every drug and vaccine onto the populace without alerting them of all of the natural things that can help keep this at bay.
And even like you mentioned, even the pharmaceutical, I would take a Z-Pack before I take a statin drug.
Oh, absolutely.
But I would be focusing on biocidin and herbs and.
Oh yeah. All of them works way, way better.
Yeah.
But again, just think about your gut. 70 to 80% of your immune system is in your gut. So, and even if you don't have gut symptoms, again, the manifestation of leaky gut can be anywhere in the body. It can be eczema, it can be thyroid issues, it can be diabetes, it can be Alzheimer's. And you could have absolutely no gut symptoms whatsoever. So, we can test for those things. But again, at the end of the day, when you have compromise of your gut, that is compromising the strength of your immune system.
Any other questions?
Good session.
Thanks very much. We'll see you next week.
All right.
I have one question.
Oh, go ahead, Louise.
About 10 years ago, my holistic MD, Glenn Rothfeld, told me that I had the highest good cholesterol of any patient he'd ever had. And I'm wondering, and actually my combined cholesterol would always show that it was a little high. But if you separated it out, it was just because my good cholesterol was so high.
Mm-hmm.
The so-called good cholesterol was so high. I had an argument with an insurance company once that wanted to charge me extra because my combined was high. And I said, no, you got to break it down. And they wouldn't.
Well, they don't do breakdowns of things. Now, with a good cholesterol, you know, an ideal value is somewhere around 60. So your HDL. Now, let's say you have a HDL of 70, 80, or 90. You know, does that necessarily mean all of that is good?
That's my question.
Maybe not. Some, you know, higher levels of 80 and the 90, still you could have some dysfunctional particles there, which is why we, you know, if you have a strong family history or something of that nature, you know, well, for anyone really, it's always still good to do, you know, a stratification of those, the LDL and the HDL, and you see the particle size, you see the number, you see the LP little a pattern, the apolipoprotein B pattern, you know, oxidized LDL. Because can cholesterol at the end of the day be problematic? Absolutely. Yes, it can be. You know, but those things become bad, you know, when it's combined with inflammation. So if you have a high homocysteine or C-reactive protein or insulin or fibrinogen or sed-rate, et cetera, then yes, those the cholesterol can definitely become problematic because cholesterol is actually sent to the areas to heal the damage that the inflammation has caused. That's why cholesterol can become bad, but it's not inherently bad like the media would and doctors would lead you to believe. So I have several patients that have cholesterols of 300, 350 total cholesterol and LDL in the 200 range, you know, but they have a genetic predisposition, but they're doing fine. This gentleman is 73 years old, you know, all of his other inflammatory factors look great. He has great energy and I anticipate him living a long life. I mean, you know, and he doesn't want to get on statins, even though his doctors are urging him. Again, 73 years old, and he's doing totally fine with a total cholesterol of 330.
I think I know why Louise's HDL was high. She's a patient of Dr. Trump, and she was on high-dose cod liver oil.
Ah.
No, but this was before I was on high-dose cod liver oil.
That's fine. Louise, you know, there are other reasons. I think Dr. Carter articulated it well. But
Dr. Trump would bother me about it every time.
But again, if you really haven't had, you know, that deeper dive with all of the subspecies of cholesterol, that would be a good test for you to do. It really would. It would really help illustrate kind of where you are. Again, all this is still a continuum type thing. So seeing where you are on that level, and then we combine it with all of your other lab results, and then we can give you a better idea of what you should or should not do based on that.
Okay, folks, if there's any other questions? All right, we'll see you next time.
Okay.
Bye now.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.